What's up, people? Back at you again this morning with another Moralities Moment. This is my next vid in my video series entitled Listen, Learn, Live. This morning's note says, hearing requires serious concentration and listening. It requires silence of the body and mind. First you must listen, but listen in your heart so that you hear the meaning intended by the teacher. Weigh information, measure facts, and then arrive at conclusions only after you have considered all the facts available to you. Okay. First thing I said in my note is, how many of you know that hearing causes a chain reaction? And here's the chain reaction that takes place from just simply hearing something. Hearing can cause you to see, think, feel, and act in a whole different way. And if you be honest with yourself, you'll know that to be true. Because how many times have you heard something and it made you see something a different way, made you think a different way about a person or a situation, made you feel a different way about a situation or a person, or maybe even act differently towards a situation or a person. You know, hearing causes a chain reaction. But my next note here says that's why hearing requires serious concentration and listening. Hearing requires serious concentration and listening. Why? Because everything you hear is not the truth or truthful. You know, how many times have you heard somebody say something, and it's one-sided story at that particular time, but then when you hear both sides of the story, you start to realize what that individual said wasn't totally the truth or truthful. That's why I always believe that there's three sides to every story. There's one side, there's the other side, and then there's the truth. And again, that goes back to hearing, properly listening, and then processing the information for what it is. That's why it's very important for us to be discerning in everything we do, because the bottom line is, and I'm learning it, and I've learned it throughout life. What people say and what people hear, I could say one thing, like I can tell you right now, or say, that I'm going to give out $1,000 bills. By the time it get back to me, man, somebody come to me and say, man, I heard you was giving away $1 million. You see, what you hear, and people can say one thing, but throughout the process, as that information is transferred to different individuals, groups, or situations, some of that truth might get distorted. Some of what's being said might get distorted. So that's why you have to be careful to make sure, if anybody tell you something, you know what, go get it from the horse's mouth. That's the best way to deal with the situation. If you want to know the truth, go straight to the horse. Find out what the horse has to say, in the situation, and even when it comes to gossiping, I don't like, to really, when people come at you talking about other people, because the first thing comes to my mind or out of my mouth, hey, wait a minute, did you say, did you say this to that individual? Do this individual know you talking about them like that? Better yet, the best course of action to do is when somebody come with you with some gossip, be like, hold up, wait a minute. If we can't bring the other person in this conversation, then I don't want to hear it. Because that way you don't get blamed for saying something that all you was doing was listening. But again, that's why it's important. Don't hearing requires, it causes a chain reaction. So be very careful and selective what you open your ears up to, because once that stuff goes in, that stuff becomes part of your inner being, and then once it becomes a part of your inner being, then the chain reactions takes place, and it's good for us to understand how the mind operates with conscious and subconscious thoughts, but that's an entirely different topic. Like I said, hearing requires you most of the time to take your emotions and set them aside, that you might be able to properly rationalize or process that which you are hearing. Sometimes, in order to hear stuff for what it really is, you're going to have to set your emotions aside, because truth be told, and from my own experience, when emotions are in all over the place, when you're listening to somebody or dealing with a certain situation, if your emotions are all over the place, then really your hearing or listening or understanding is going to be all over the place. So basically, the best thing to do is set your emotions aside, so that you might hear clearly, really what's going on in that situation. Because, just being perfectly honest, when you're trying to deal with a situation or listen to somebody's explanation for something, you already mad, it ain't really doing no good because you ain't really trying to hear what they saying. But in order to resolve the conflict or whatever, it would do you good to set your emotions aside so you can hear what the individual is saying, and then you can properly rationalize and process the information to get an understanding so the situation can be resolved. See, a lot of times we go into situations the same and leave the situations the same because we went in with the wrong intention or with the wrong attitude or the wrong frame of mind or heart, so the situation is not really dealt with properly because of emotions. And when your emotions are all over the place, then you don't allow yourself to think rationally or think clear. Have you ever just thought about after you heard something or you're dealing with a situation and you listen to what a person's saying and then you just go off the deep end and say something and then you go back and think about it really once you done cleared your mind and your emotions have subsided, you be like, dang, I shouldn't have did that, or dang, I shouldn't have said that. That's why it's important when it comes to listening and hearing and all that stuff. Set your emotions aside so that you can be in the right frame of mind so you can process the information and try to come up with some type of reasonable resolution to the conflict. My next point is stop listening with the only intended purpose to respond and learn to listen for understanding. A lot of times when we go into situations, we hear what somebody's saying, but we only listening so we can get our point across, so we can say our little piece, and we miss the fact that we should be listening to get an understanding. And see, and that's what happens a lot of times. We so busy listening with the sole intention on responding till we miss understanding what the real issue is. Next note says, I've learned that a lot of times when dealing with conflict or general conversation, at times because we only listen to, and this is what I was just saying, we only listen to respond and not understand, we miss an opportunity for growth, true conflict resolution, and understanding of what the real issue or issues are. That's why it's important, again, for you to set your emotions aside so you can clear your head, so you can get understanding, so you can grow from the situation, come up with a true conflict, a resolution to the conflict, and get understanding of what the real issues are. Because again, when we go in there with the wrong heart, the wrong mind, and the wrong attitude, we miss what the real issues are. So chances are that situation or that issue is not going to be resolved. But my last note here says, again, when it comes to any matters of the heart, and in this instance, listening with the heart, make sure your heart is in the right place. The statement said, listen with your heart. Remember, I've said time and time in the past that the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. Your heart can have you feeling one thing and thinking one thing, and that ain't really the case. So when you go into a situation, make sure your heart is in the right place. Make sure your heart is not full of anger, bitterness, resentment, and all of that stuff. Again, like I said, set your emotions to the side, so you can clear your mind, so you can hear what's being said, so you can rationalize and process the information, and then come up with some type of reasonable resolution. Again, this is all a growing process. I didn't get to that point overnight, and chances are you probably won't get there either, but at least know the process. So when it comes to hearing, remember, listen to get an understanding and not so much just to respond. Again, listen, learn, live. Hope you enjoyed this morning's morality moment. Peace, and I'm out.